My name is Stuart Somerville. I'm a farmer in East Central Alberta, and I farm at the edge of Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territory. And I'll be reading from page 253 and 254 of the Executive Summary from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The principles enunciated in the new Royal Proclamation will serve as the foundation for an action-oriented covenant of reconciliation, which points the way forward toward an era of mutual respect and equal opportunity. Calls to Action, 46. We call upon the parties to the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement to develop and sign a covenant of reconciliation that would identify principles for working collaboratively to advance reconciliation in Canadian society. And that would include, but not be limited to, 1. Reaffirmation of the parties' commitment to reconciliation. 2. Repudiation of concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous lands and peoples, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius, and the reformation of laws, governance structures, and policies within their respective institutions that continue to rely on such concepts. 3. Full adoption and implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as the framework for reconciliation. 4. Support for the renewal or establishment of treaty relationships based on principles of mutual recognition, mutual respect, and shared responsibility for maintaining those relationships into the future. 5. Enabling those excluded from the settlement agreement to sign on to the covenant of reconciliation. 6. Enabling additional parties to sign on to the covenant of reconciliation. Governments at all levels of Canadian society must also commit to a new framework for reconciliation to guide their relations with Aboriginal peoples. Call to Action 47. We call upon federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to repudiate concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous peoples and lands, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius, and to reform those laws, government policies, and litigation strategies that continue to rely on such concepts. Churches and faith groups also have an important role to play in fostering reconciliation through support for the United Nations Declaration and repudiation of the doctrine of discovery. Calls to Action 48. We call upon the church parties to the settlement agreement and all other faith groups and interfaith social justice groups in Canada who have not already done so to formally adopt and comply with the principles, norms, and standards of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a framework for reconciliation. This would include, but not be limited to, the following commitments. 1. Ensuring that their institutions, policies, programs, and practices comply with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. 2. Respecting Indigenous peoples' right to self-determination in spiritual matters, including the right to practice, develop, and teach their own spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies, consistent with Article 12.1 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. 3. Engaging in ongoing public dialogue and actions to support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. 4. Issuing a statement no later than March 31, 2016 from all religious denominations and faith groups as to how they will implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. 49. We call upon all religious denominations and faith groups who have not already done so to repudiate concepts used to justify European sovereignty over Indigenous lands and peoples, such as the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius.